What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan and I am back with my top bets for the weekend in the world of mixed martial arts. It's a massive weekend. There's lots of fights going on. You have one championship, you have the UFC, you have Cage Warriors, and I think there are a few other organizations putting on fights again. And it's funny because a lot of these weeks I come here and it's like, maybe there's one UFC, kind of middling UFC card, and it's very hard to get 5 bets, and that's not this week. It's not this week. I have a load of bets. I've actually changed one bet very, very late coming in here. In fact, I was like 2 minutes into recording. I'm like, no, I'm going to change that bet. So this is a re-record. It's the first time I've ever done that. I'm like, no, I'm going for this bet. And I'll tell you what it is in a second. But yeah, we have a big weekend coming up. And I could have given you 6, 7, 8 bets here, and we'll look at some of the bets obviously towards the end of the show as well. But last week we had an absolutely great week all together. 3 out of the 4 hit the Flier. Unfortunately didn't. Very close though. Song Yadong. I had him to win by decision. Obviously finished in the 4th round. We can count ourselves a little bit unlucky there. Few fights though, especially the Pia Cirilla one, we did get lucky in that one. Ryan Shelley was clearly the better fighter through 2 rounds in that. Harila Connon with the shot over the top. Seemed to be a bit of an injury or something, and he got the win there. Counting it as a win on the bet. Obviously, he got the finish there in the end. Ryan Curtis did end up losing though. As I said, long time out. I was banking on his skill, and it just wasn't to be for him on the night. But the 2 other ones we had to win, the 2 props, Reese McKee via KO. I gave you around plus 110 last week. I believe it was around that. I saw one place had a plus 130, so I think it was around that. Great win there. A great win for Reese. He should be off to the UFC next. And then over in the UFC, we had Caubahayo, who got the submission, as I predicted last week, at plus 160. So 3 out of 4 from last week. We are 29 out of 55 overall, which I am absolutely delighted with. And 4 of 14 for the Fliers, which we've hit, obviously, 4 of them earlier in the year. Haven't hit one in a while now. Maybe this is the week. But yeah, it's it was a great week. And long way to continue. Right, let's talk about next week. And look, the first bet I'm going for here is one from one championship. Now, I have a 1 championship bet, I have 3 UFC bets, and I have 1 bet from Cage Warriors as well. The 1 championship bet is the one I have changed, and I was going to give you a bet from Demetrius Johnson versus Adrian Moraes. I will talk about more about that in a second, but I've changed, and I've gone for Ahmed Mujtaba to win against Northcutt at plus 127. Now, the odds on 1 championship, sometimes they come out very late in the week. I have got these from oddsportal.com. I actually use them all the time for 1 championship odds. This is not an ad or anything, I just literally do. And they're usually very, very good. And I've compared their prices here with a couple of the other fights that are up in other places, and they're pretty similar. So we will adjust it anyway. When the price gets updated, check me out on Twitter if you want to send me a tweet or in the dimensions here, and we can adjust it. But the price to have for Mujtaba to win this fight is plus 127. Now, I think that is a little bit high, to be honest. Now, I will take him anywhere up until like minus 180, minus 185. I really do. I think he has a great chance of winning this fight. And looking through their records, I think a big factor here is the fact Northcutt has been out for 4 years. Now, Mujtaba isn't exactly a guy who has had loads of fights either in that time. You know, it's probably a good guy in terms of that, but he has been more active than Sage. You know, Sage last fought in 2019. In that time, Mujtaba fought at the end of last year, just over 5-6 months ago. He fought at the start of the year before as well, so he's been active recently. He was out for a while, obviously, you know, with the pandemic, everything kind of shut down. He was due to have a fight in 2019, another one in 2020. They didn't end up happening, so, but he is back, and Sage doesn't have those 2 fights back yet, and I think that is a big issue for him. So that's the first part of this, right? That is the first part of this. Now, we'll get into Mujtaba and stuff in a second, but on Sage, and why I think that time off will be a big issue for him. Now, look, you don't need me to explain why time off is a big issue in mixed martial arts or in any sport. But for Sage Northcutt, I think it's a little bit more of an issue for 2 reasons. I think Sage carried a lot of muscle right? And you need a lot of cardio to carry that muscle. And we've seen in some fights, Sage has no problem. In other fights, he has a bit of an issue. I just think when you're not in, fight shape, if you want to put it that way, when you're not used to doing it anymore, it could really be an issue against a guy like Mujtaba. I think it really, really, really could be an issue. Like, if this fight happened after Sage had 2 fights, the likes of Raju and Amorim, like Mujtaba had, and then he was fighting Mujtaba, I wouldn't call that a problem at all. And the next part I'm going to talk about as well. I think putting everything together has always been an issue for Sage. I think he's a very good striker. He can wrestle and, he's jiu-jitsu and, he's not Crown Gracie or anything like that, but he can, he can fight on the ground. Putting it together on the in-between bits, as I always say, has been an issue for Sage. Being out for 4 years can't have helped that. Right? And if he has matured, let's say, as a person, as a fighter and all that, and his skills have all lined up, I actually think even if they are, it'll take a couple of fights to get back to that place at 100% of where he'd like to be. So I think those two are going to be massive issues. And like, sometimes we just say, he's been out for 4 years, but I'm trying to give you specific issues there, which I think will be at play for Sage. Now, that's all well and good, but you need someone who has the ability to take advantage of that, and I think Ahmed Mujtaba has. If you listen to my preview here, I talked a little bit about him. Look, the wrestling is what he wants to do first. He can throw good shots. He throws straight down the middle with big power. I mentioned his a couple of opponents there. He's a big knockout in seconds over Raju. The big place Sage can win this fight is the defensive strike of Mujtaba. He wouldn't be the best defensive striker in the world. I think he can take shots, but as I said, it's all wrestling with him. That's what he wants to do. He wants to get you to the ground, get you against the fence, put his head against your head and hold you there. He's very, very calm when it gets to the ground. I've written the word calm in my notes, and I've probably said it in 2 or 3 different fights now, talking about him previewing his fights, but he's so calm on the ground. And, he in past fights, I've watched him and thought he needs to be a little bit more calm. And in these more recent fights, he has been a little bit more calm. I think it was an obvious enough thing, and I think it's something that his coaches have really helped him with. Plus, I think Sage in the past has shown his strength and the ability to kind of stop an initial takedown and get the fight to the clinch. Mujtaba's lovely trips against the cage as well, and I do think he will take Sage down at some stage. So, look, if all things were even here, and Sage Northcutt was back with a couple of wins, and he hadn't been out for so long, I think it'd still be a pick 'em enough fight. Mujtaba's a good fighter. He is a very, very, very good fighter. There's no doubt in that whatsoever. He hasn't had the best run of it in terms of like Sage having injuries and stuff, but still, he's still 10-2 in his career. He's won four fights, I think, in one championship now. Not a bad record at all. I'm beating some good guys with some good winning records as well. So I'm very interested to see this fight. I'm very interested to see how Sage comes back. I think it's honestly probably a good matchup compared to some of the other guys he could have gotten in this division, and we'll see how it goes for Sage. So a big fight, but my first bet of the week, I'm going for Mujtaba to win straight up, plus 127 on that one. Next bet I'm going for is from the UFC, and this is another kind of feel bet here, and it's the fight between Belal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns to go to decision, and that's minus 125. So either guy can win, just has to go to a decision, or it could be a draw. There are 2 main reasons I've gone for this. And the first and biggest reason I've gone for it is the performance that Gilbert Burns had against Masvidal. I think it was a weird performance, and also I'll get to more than one championship bets in a second as well. I know I said I'd get to the Dimitri Johnson one. I will get back to that in a second. But to Gilbert Burns, I just think that performance against Masvidal, not that it was a bad performance, right? And normally I'd look at it and I would say that's a sort of, and this is a very harsh thing to say, and before I say it, I actually don't mean it. So it looked to me like a performance of a guy who was at the dying embers of his prime. He'd had some great fights very recently, and this was the first on his way down to our performance. Now, I don't think it was. Maybe this weekend it will be. Maybe we'll be shown, but I don't think it was. And the reason I don't think it was is I think he just showed so much respect to Masvidal that he did, and not even respect, but he kind of, the fear of being Ben Askren. I'm not saying he was afraid of Masvidal at all, but he was afraid that Masvidal might catch him at one big shot. And I think he did everything in his power to not be caught with that one big shot, knowing that if he tried to outpoint Masvidal, he'd almost certainly win the fight. And not even almost, right? And that's exactly what he did. Now, the reason here, again, that I'm taking that into account is I think it's hard to adjust away from that. That fight was only a month ago. I think it's very hard to adjust away from that. When you're fighting someone like Belal, right, who doesn't have the same, maybe some people over it, but he doesn't have the same like finishing ability as Masvidal once had, at least. And normally he probably wouldn't want to fight that way against someone like Belal, but I believe it's going to be tough to adjust that straight away. Plus, the other side of what Belal is very dangerous with is his wrestling. Now, we'll talk about the jiu-jitsu of Burns in a second, but let's say he didn't want to be taken down, and he probably doesn't. I think this sort of maybe slightly slower, more controlled pace is a better way of not getting taken down by Belal Muhammad, right? So that's why I think if Burns wins the fight, I think there's a high chance of it going to a decision for those two reasons. For Belal, we know what Belal kind of wants to do, I think. Now, let's talk about the jiu-jitsu of Burns against Belal. What he probably wants to do is wrestle him and take him down for 5 rounds. But then you have the jiu-jitsu of Burns. Now, here's where my plan kind of falls apart a little bit. Could he get submitted? Maybe. And it's very dangerous putting yourself into the guard or whatever of Burns. But Belal is a smart guy. Will he do that early while he's dry and all? I think that probably something he won't. I could see a lot of clinching against the cage early in this first round, and I think Belal wanted the 5 rounds for that reason. If you can't give away a round early against Burns if it's only 3 rounds, you can if it's 5 rounds. Give away the first round. Even maybe you might win it. You might win it. You might even lose the second, but in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, when you're all wet, the ability to submit someone is way, way less. Then take him down. All right? That's the kind of game plan I think I see from Belal here. I think if Burns is slower on the feet, I think Belal will be happy enough to strike away with him. Now, Burns is a big shot and he can knock anyone out, but I think Belal will be very safe if he fights that game. So I just look, what I foresee here in one word is safety. I think I see a lot, and it's very hard to be safe in an MMA fight, and don't we know that? I was watching him there sitting cage side at the weekend, and it's very, very, very hard. Don't get me wrong. But I think that will be the aim for both of these guys. I just think, now, as I said, I'm wrong every week, and I could be wrong again, but I feel like that is the aim for both of them. And I think they're both smart, and they'll both play a smart game, and I think it'll go long, and I think it'll be close. So that's the bet I'm going for. Second bet of the week, Belal Muhammad, Gilbert Burns, fight goes to decision, -125. Who would I pick to win? I have a rule of thumb, I always pick wrestling over jiu-jitsu, but when you're one of the best jiu-jitsu players in the world, it's hard to pick that rule of thumb, but I think I'm just going for Belal. I'm just about going for Belal. The team of my week, I think, here with my picks, and as we move on to my 3rd pick for the week, is layoffs, but also picking against the long layoffs, but also picking for what we've seen, right? What we've seen recently. So the layoff, obviously picking against Sage, what we've seen recently from both Burns and Belal. The long layoff here with Cejudo, but also what we've seen recently from Sterling. I'm going for Aljamain Sterling. He's around even money here, guys. He's around even money. I have him at -103. He's around that to get the win here. And I have talked a good bit about that fight this week. And it was a fight, that I was really unsure about. Really. And I'm still pretty unsure about it. But the more I talk about it, and I've talked to a few people in the know, and I actually, for the first time in a long while, because I don't like to get my my thoughts corrupted. Sometimes I like to go away and watch the fights myself and do it. But I've read a couple of articles. My guy Spencer Kai wrote a great article about the with the coaches that he does for all these big fights, and they had thoughts similar enough to mine, which is, I know, a bit of a humble brag there, but you know what I mean. Sometimes when you see it, it's like, oh, okay, that thought was correct. And the thought here for me is that there's a lot of thoughts in it, but the thought is Henry Cejudo has been out of the game for 3 years, right? Which is a long time. Luke Thomas put up the stat about, I think it's fighters over 35 being 2 and 35, something like that. 2 and 39 maybe. 2 and 29, sorry. 2 and 29, I think. Fighters over 25 being 2 and 29 in UFC title fights. And both of them were Tyron Woodley. No one has ever done it. And Henry Cejudo is 36, and at the smaller weight classes, it's even tougher. So all the stats, all the layoff is going against him. But one of the big parts for me, before I get even to the tactics of why I think it's a tough fight for him, is that why did Henry Cejudo retire? Right? I think we've all kind of and maybe I'm wrong, so let me know in the comment section below, but I think we've all kind of come to the reckoning that Henry Cejudo retired to try to get a little bit more money out of the UFC. It didn't really work. He waited, and what happened next? Right? So what happened next is the next question. I was on John Lanning's podcast as well, speaking about this. I think it'll be out before this even. Why did Henry Cejudo retire? Was the first question. And why is Henry Cejudo coming back is the next question. Like, why is Henry Cejudo coming back? And that is a question that I don't know anyone has the answer for. I listened to the Countdown show, and he said the result he retired because, to play that game, and he didn't say that, but he said he had a family and a child and all, fair enough. But why is he coming back? He's achieved everything. Maybe if he come back to fight for the belt in the weight class above, absolutely, but he's not doing that. Like, why is Henry Cejudo coming back? I don't know. And if, the motivation is just to come back and get a bit of money, will we see another TJ Dillashaw type of fight? Whether he's an injury or whatever, he just kind of shows up and that. I don't know. I don't think that'll be the case, right? I don't think that will be the case. But also, what will be the case? I find it very hard to see Henry Cejudo's motivation here. Now, Henry Cejudo is kind of playing a character, and it's tough to know as well. So, who knows? But all of that points against Cejudo. Now, it might all be nonsense, right? And I've said this recently as well. It's like, look, we don't know, but we have to break it down. We have to talk it out in our heads. Like, what do we think could be the case? I think it's all pointing in a bad direction for Cejudo on that. But let's talk about the fight for a second here. How's the fight pointing for him? And I really believe if anyone tells you they know on this, I think they're bullshitting you. Because I went back and I probably watched more tape on this fight than I had going back watching opponents of both of them than I have in any fight in recent memory. Now, I used to a lot before, but in the last few years, and the reason I did it, right, I wanted to find someone similar to Sterling for Cejudo and for Cejudo for Sterling, and I really, really couldn't. There was bits and pieces, like areas where they'd fight, or maybe a bit of a wrestling for both of them, or good jiu-jitsu for both of them. But there really was, especially recently, like Cejudo hasn't fought recently, but for Sterling, there was nothing recently that would suggest it. Like Petr Yan, a completely different fighter to Cejudo, completely different. The TJ Dillashaw fight, you can write it off. Dominic Cruz, nothing like Aljamain. Sterling, Marlon Moraes, a little bit I took from that. Not much in terms of the matchup, but here's one thing I did take from that. So, in conclusion, not much I can take for any of their fights. The one thing I did take from the Marlon Moraes fight, and I think a thing that Sterling needs to prey on, right, is that Henry Cejudo will always counter you the way he fights now. Always. He bit on everything Marlon Moraes threw, and he did it on purpose. It wasn't that he was biting on feints and he was throwing them out there and he was getting caught. No, he was doing it on purpose. So Sterling knows that everything he throws, it'll be answered by Cejudo. He needs to use that. So that's a one big key for me here. And I think Sterling is smart enough to do that. And I think Ray Longo is smart enough to see that as well when watching tape, right? I also think that a key here, and a real key here, is distance. Because both of them like to fight. And I've said this a few times now, but to just repeat it again, they're very, very, very similar fighters in the area they like to fight. Once they touch their opponents, they're different. The way they move is very different. The way they move in and out is very different. But the area in which they fight is very similar. They both like to fight on the outside, win outside. They both like to fight on the ground when they get inside, right? Sterling, a very good wrestler, very good jiu-jitsu. Cejudo, Olympic gold medalist and all that. Sterling likes to fight long and kind of languid on the outside. Cejudo likes to fight, for a shorter guy, he likes to fight the Lyoto Machida karateka style. Recently, anyway. Could he have changed that again? Who knows? We'll see. But who's going to win that battle? So the first battle is the length battle, the distance battle. Is it going to be Sterling fighting that kind of languid step in jab to the body? He throws a lovely double jab to the body sometimes, and those kind of leaned high kicks, I like to call them. Who's going to be able to win that battle? Is it going to be him, or is it going to be Cejudo waiting for him to throw them and then countering them? I would suggest that double jab would be a great weapon, right? Because you double jab him, he's going to throw something, step out, step back in and catch him the next time. It's a great shot in MMA that isn't utilized enough, the double treble shot to the body, jab to the body, but even one jab to the body. Knowing that the only thing that's going to come after the jab to the body from you is exiting and re-entering. Knowing that the only thing coming from him after the jab is him throwing. So draw it out of him. Draw it out of him, knowing you're going to be ultra defensive and sound in that defensive position. And I think so the reason why I said I wanted to watch other people fighting in a similar way, there's very few fighters on planet Earth who can do that like Aljamain Sterling can. And I think that's a nightmare for Henry Cejudo. I really do. Right? From the distance position. Moraes did it a bit, and he had a bit of success early in that fight, but not many people can do that. Sterling can now. Whether he will or not, whether he'll have seen it in the tape coming up to it and everything like that, it remains to be seen. Now, who will be able to break the distance and get the takedown? That's another interesting thing. Like, it's funny, we look at Henry Cejudo and we think he is the Olympic gold medalist. Okay, he's going to win it. Not necessarily. He wasn't able, like the first Demetrius Johnson fight especially, Demetrius took him down many times in the clinch, beat him in the wrestling. Sterling is a bigger version of Demetrius Johnson with very, very good wrestling as well. Not a bigger version. He's not very similar to Demetrius Johnson the way he fights at all, but you know what I mean. He's a bigger guy than Demetrius Johnson, and he can do similar things to Demetrius, especially in the clinch and things like that. I think Cejudo is more of kind of not a traditional wrestler as he would be, and I think although Sterling, he loves a little bit of a double leg as well. I think he sometimes wrestles into jiu-jitsu positions or wrestles to take a jiu-jitsu position. Look at Corey Sandhagen, for example, in that fight. And I really don't know who's going to win that battle. I really don't know. I feel like Cejudo has a better chance of getting Sterling down from closing the distance to getting inside to the takedown. I feel like Sterling's going to find it very hard to take Cejudo down from merely closing the distance and trying to get a takedown. Now, if there's a shot and then another shot and another shot and then he goes for a takedown or jumps on the back or something, that's a different proposition, right? And I do think he can get Cejudo from there, and I do think he can get Cejudo from the clinch as well. So, it's a place I can't pick out, but what I can pick out, I think, is the striking. What I can pick out, I think, is Henry Cejudo likely not being the same as he once was, and I think that's enough to sway it for Aljamain Sterling, and that's why I'm going for him. So my pick is Aljamain Sterling in that one at -103. Right, the next one I'm going for here, and do you know what? I like this bet a lot. And it's the Cage Warriors main event between Dylan Hazan and Caolan Loughran. And I'm going for the over 3.5 rounds here. And that is +150. Now, I give the over 3.5 rounds here. Honestly, I think it mightn't be much over 3.5 rounds. Now, the reason I love this fight, I really love this fight. Two undefeated guys. I think Caolan Loughran has taken a bit of a bigger step up in his last fight against Loughran. He'll tell you it wasn't a step up, but I believe it was. And this is again a step up from that, because I think Hazan is very good. It's also a step up Hazan from everyone he has fought to Caolan Loughran. He had a really tough test in his last one out against oh god, the name escapes me. The famous fight with Nathaniel Wood. Go and look for it. God Almighty, that'll kill me now. I'll pull it up here at some stage. But it turned into a bit of an easier fight for him, but still it was a trial. You know, it was a trial in there. What I do look, the only thing I expect here is both lads to rise to the occasion. I think Hazan will be. It's funny, I've used the word careful a few times. I think he will be more careful with the striking of Loughran than many of Loughran's opponents have been recently, or have been able to be recently. Loughran, I actually, if you haven't seen him fighting, I think everyone would enjoy him. He's this weird sort of style where he stands in the middle of the cage and he kind of just strikes from that position. It's funny, there was an old referee here that used to do GA matches here, and he wasn't the fittest in the world, and he was standing in the centre circle and he'd blow the whistle, he'd referee the whole match from the centre circle. That's it, Caolan Loughran a little bit. Now, not quite, and I think actually in the Shanks fight he did change it up a little bit, but still he throws this long jab out there. He just kind of waits and stalks. He was like an eagle or something stalking you. And I think Loughran will be like, or Hazan, sorry, will be like, yeah, stalk me away, stalk me. I'm going to bide my time here. I'm not going to get caught by anything, and try to force Loughran out. And I think that could happen for a good 2 rounds here, and then they'll get going. So I think this is the sort of fight that finishes maybe towards the end of the 3rd round, into the 4th round, into the 5th. Sorry, towards the end of the 4th round, into the 5th round. I think it'll either be a late stoppage or one of them will win by decision. Now, that's the way, as I said, we can all be wrong, but that's my pick here. I was looking at both of them. I think that the price, Caolan Loughran opened around minus 200. He was into minus, let me just check it 100% here again. He was into minus 150, and now let me just check. He is out to as far as, do you know what, he's back out to, and he's back out to minus 200 again. So let me just have a quick look here. Yeah, open to minus 200 into minus 185. He actually, funny enough, he went out to he opened to minus 300 into minus 245, into minus 185, into minus 180, into minus 170, as I said, and now back out to minus 200. This has gone up and down and over and header. I think people are taking him at those odds. I think people have took him at that now. I was looking at him at minus 170 literally an hour ago, half an hour ago before I started recording this. And he was minus 170. He's gone out to minus 200 again. This is all over the place, this betting is. I honestly, it's a pick 'em fight for me. I'm gonna pick Caolan Loughran, but very good fight, and I like the over there. I think Loughran might have enough to win it late, but I like the over 3.5 rounds at a plus 150. Right, that is the 4 bets for the week. Here is my flyer of the week. Now, my originally, and this is the Frevola fight. So this is the Frevola against Dober fight. Originally, one of my bets had been this fight in the knockout, and I believe it's minus 125 for either guy to get the knockout, right? Which is, I think, still a very good price here. But the bet I have gone for the flyer I adjusted, I've gone for Frevola to get the win by TKO KO at plus 600. And I think this is a phenomenal flyer bet. Now, I think either Frevola or Dober is going to get the knockout. I don't see this fight going to submission. I don't see it going to decision. Someone is getting sparked here. Someone's getting sparked. If you were to give me plus 200 on both of them, I would take Dober. Right? I would take Dober. It was funny, I was listening to Ray Longo, Frevola's coach, and he expected Dober to be the favourite. So I'm not saying anything against the team or anything. In fact, I'm picking Frevola here, so I'm not. He has a better chance, I think, of winning, but he also has a massive chance of losing. Because I see any of Dober's fights lately, see any of Frevola's fights, these guys go hell for leather. They take shots and they give them. They take shots and they give them. I just wonder who can take it and who can give it a little bit harder. Pause. I think I think plus 600 is a great bet. If you give me plus 100, would I take it? And or as I said, plus 200 for both of them, I take Frevola, or I take Dober, but I plus 600 for Frevola. One of them is getting knocked out. Maybe one guy has, 60-70% chance. Maybe one guy has 30-40. But one of them is getting knocked out. And you give me a toss-up. I really think it's a toss-up enough of a fight. You give me plus 600 in that, I'll take it. So the flyer for this week is plus 600. Right, that's it. That's our 5 bets for the week. Let's look at some of the other betting odds. Let's look at one championship first. And we'll take a select few of these. Roberto Soldic and Sebastian Carestam. Minus 500 there for Soldic, plus 305. I think that's about right. Yeah, I do think it's about right. I think this is going to be an absolute banger of a contest as well. It's very hard for me to give Carestam a chance there at plus 305. That'd be normally the sort of bet I'd look at, but Soldic is just so much of a better striker than most people in that division, although Carestam is very good, and Carestam doesn't have the wrestling to make it an issue for him. So I think Soldic has been love that minus. Minus 500, I don't love it. How can you ever love minus 500? But I don't love the plus 305. I don't love it. Anglo Nosang as well is a big favourite there. Minus 714 plus 394 for Rong Fang. I don't think you will win with that price. It's hard to go for that. I mentioned the Sage Northcutt. He's minus 175. Mujtaba plus 125. Now the odds aren't up yet for Loan Tainanis and Okra Young. That's a fight I really want to see odds in, because I think I'm taking Tainanis in that one, and I feel like he could be plus money. So keep an eye on that. Tainanis is my pick there, and we'll adjust the price as it comes, and we'll put it up in the comments. But interesting one there. And then the fight that we're all going to be talking about. Actually, first, Reese McLaren and Ahmed, big favourite rematch. He won the first one again. Minus 385 plus 256. I think that's a pretty good price on Ahmed, in fact. But DJ against Moraes. Around plus 140 for Moraes, minus 196 for DJ. Let me just check the betting odds here over on Best Fight Odds. Not too dissimilar to that. They have minus 175 for DJ, plus 125. So that's the type of price you're getting there. I was going to give Moraes as my pick. Honestly, I'm the biggest Demetrius Johnson fan in the world. He's one of the only fighters that I struggle to be unbiased about, because I just think he's phenomenal. But he's also touching on 38, 39. The last two fights, he looked good, but like he could have succumbed in both of them. And now it's another year on. I think it's going to be tough for Demetrius. Honestly, I like that plus 125 for Aljamain and Moraes. I hope I'm wrong, kind of. Not to be unbiased or anything. But I just think this is going to be a great fight. I really do. I was talking to Chatchery the other day, and he said it straight out that Demetrius Johnson can't afford to go in here and not fight for the finish, which is actually, like, sometimes promoters say that, but it's actually true in this one, I think. The way the fight is scored as a whole and all. Against a guy like Moraes, you have to go in there and try to put it on him, because he's going to land some big shots. At some stage in there, he's going to probably get on top with his string. He might even get into some good submission, I suppose, positions. You have to put it on him and try to finish him, and that's what Demetrius has been doing. He did it the last time, and I think he'll try to do it again. But Moraes is dangerous, very dangerous, and I can't wait for that fight. Cannot wait for it whatsoever. Right. Some of the other cards. Let's look just quickly through Cage Warriors first, and then I'll finish up with the UFC. A few interesting ones on Cage Warriors. Sylvester Miller is against Emmanuel Zakaria. Now, Sylvester Miller came in and almost won the title a few fights ago, and he's plus 145 here. I wouldn't go big in it, but if you have a bit of an ACA, I think that's not a bad one to throw it into. Tanio Padlericio, I think that's a tremendous fight against Gerardo Fanni. This I actually, let me just check this again, but yeah, this has changed. Started out at minus 125 out to minus 165. Now that was pretty even when I looked at it earlier, and he's a big favourite now as Pagliaricio. So Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'm probably go for the plus money there, to be honest. Probably would go for the plus money in Gerardo Fanicaller. Pedersoli's on this as well. He's a big enough favourite, minus 220 against Giannis Bakker. Darren Stewart and Leon Aliu. I like Stewart there at minus 110. I must say Aliu is the favourite now at minus 120. Sam Creasy is on this card as well. He's the underdog against Michelangelo Lupoli, who impressed last time out. I was very impressed with him, but Creasy is never an easy out for anyone. Honestly, I'd probably avoid betting on that one. I'm not sure on that one. So those are some of the highlights from Cage Warriors. But from the UFC, just not too long before we recorded, the Bryce Mitchell fight against Ivalev has fallen out. I don't believe we have odds up yet for the new fight. So we'll leave that one aside for a second. The prices on Belal and Burns very close. I'm looking at the different odds makers here. They're changing all over the place. Belal is the underdog. He is the underdog. He's a plus money everywhere. Plus 100 in one place, minus 125 for Burns. Burns is across the board, minus 135 to minus 125-ish. And Belal across the board is minus 100 to minus 110-ish. 110-ish. I expected Belal to be a bigger price than that. I'm not going to lie. Even though I'm picking Belal to win, I thought he'd be a bigger price than that. Interesting one now. And obviously I gave you the bet for that one to go to decision at minus 125. So interesting there. Andrade and Zonyan. Andrade is minus 205 here. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure about Andrade. You'd give me this fight a year ago, I would have picked her no problem, especially at that price. But I'm avoiding this until I see more tape on Andrade. See if the Aaron Blanchfield thing was a blip. See, I just am awaiting this one. I'm just waiting on it. Now, if you don't want to wait on it, Andrade KO TKO plus 300 is probably the bet I go for. But Sterling Cejudo. Now, let's look at some of the props for this. Straight up money. Cejudo's the favourite here, lads. He's a favourite in some books. Actually, he's not the favourite in other books. Minus 117 for Cejudo, minus 103. In another book, Cejudo is plus 100, minus 120 for Sterling. So a real, genuine pick 'em. Let's look at the over-under prices. 2.5 rounds. The under is minus 175. The over is minus 250. Fight to go to a decision. Minus 135. Doesn't go to a decision. Plus 100. So they're expecting it to go to decision, but very, very close there. What about Sterling submission? Plus 400-ish for Sterling submission. Cejudo submission, plus 1,200. I don't think that's happening. Cejudo knockout, don't like that either. Plus 325, plus 800 for the Sterling TKO KO. I don't think that's necessarily the worst bet in the world, plus 800. I don't think that is terrible, but yeah, it's a fight I'm not finding it hard to pick the winner. I do think Sterling will win, but I'm finding it hard to see exactly how it goes and what decides it. But it's a very interesting fight. Jordan and Gracie. Let's look at the Gracie by submission prices. We should always plus 200. Not bad. I like Jordan in that one though. Maybe to win the decision there. Jordan to win by decision plus 275. Not bad there, and he's minus 175 to win straight up, so let's go with that. He's plus 160 to get the knockout. Dober and Frevola. Dober, as I mentioned, he is the favourite, minus 205, plus 175 for Frevola. And I've given you a bet for that one. Clark and Njoku as well. I love giving Devin Clark as like one of my flyers, and I've done it a few times now, but Clark wins inside the distance, plus 450. I like that. I really like that. They're very close in the betting. Minus 190 for Njoku, plus 175 for Clark. What price is Njoku to win inside the distance? Plus 125. That's the most likely outcome, if we're being honest. But if we're looking at a flyer, I like both of them. Give one as a flyer, one as a straight up bet. I do think the fight is not going to the distance. Doesn't go to decision, minus 140. So is someone submitting someone? Probably not. And yeah, that's kind of it, I think, from the UFC. Chaos Williams is fighting on this card. He's a big favourite, minus 135. Minus 315. Plus 265 for his opponent, Ronaldo. Marina Rodriguez, actually, this is a pretty good fight against Virna Jandiroba. I like Jandiroba here, to be honest. She is the she is the underdog, you know what? She can just go in there and put a fight on that people aren't expecting. And she's done it so many times now at this stage. Minus 200 fight to go to decision is not a bad bet, but I'd go for Genjiroba straight up at plus 124 there. Phil Hawes, I always liked him to either get knocked out or get the knockout. Aliskerov, don't know about him knocking him out, but he's plus 225 to do that. Hawes to get the knockout is, let me see it, they don't have the, oh no they do, plus 350, so let's go for one of them. Fight doesn't go to decision, minus 235, so yeah, I think it's one of them in there. So Zamagulov, the favorite, plus 160, the underdog at plus 160, which is a little bit surprising, I think. Estevam, minus 182. Ribeiro is the favorite at minus 190 against Joseph Holmes at plus 150. Daniel Santos is again the favorite, minus 186 against Johnny Munoz Jr. at plus 161. All right, that is it. That is all my bets for the week in the world of mixed martial arts. I will just go over them again. So, number 1, Ahmed Mujtaba over 1 championship, plus 127. Belal and Burns fight to go to a decision at minus 125 is bet number 2. Bet number 3, Aljamain Sterling at minus 103, straight up moneyline bet. The number 4 in the bets is the Cage Warriors Rome main event between Caolan, Loughran and Dylan Hazan to go over the 3.5 rounds at plus 150. And my flyer of the week, Matt Frevola to get the knockout over at the UFC at plus 600. Plus 600 in that one. All right, everyone. Let me know your bet in the comments section below. We'll have fun with it this weekend. Bet responsibly. Don't go mad with it. Have fun, as I said. And we'll come back next week and review our bets. Until then, my name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all